Hey there Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. In this video, we're going to be going over how to paint rust effects. Let's get started.
So to start this video off, I have a pretty decent recipe for rust techniques, and I wanted to kind of share that with you guys here. So to start off, we're going to switch over to gunmetal for our first color, and this is going to be the base coat of the entire blade of the model here. We're going to be just working on the blade of this plague bearer here, or poxwalker, one of those two. So we'll just coat this over the entire blade. You may need 2 coats, although you could probably get away with 1 for this one. Now, especially when working with metallics, I'm sure we went over this, but you'll always want to use a little bit of water or medium to thin them down. They can come out a little bit chunky and obscure the detail of your models, so just keep that in mind whenever you're working with metallics. Always thin them down just a little bit more than you think you should, and you should be safe. And whenever you're painting, always be sure to just try to keep even coverage and consistency across the model. We should be safe there. And going over to the next step, we're going to switch over to our first wash step of this model, and that's going to be dark tone. We're going to take this and coat the entirety of the blade pretty heavily with it, as long as I can keep it in my hands there. And we'll just let this dry for about 30 to 45 minutes and continue on with our next step there. And a blade like this has a lot of detail, so it'll naturally want to pool in certain areas. On a more flat blade, you'll want to kind of take either a clean brush or the same brush and just kind of wipe away that excess wash if you need to. Once that's dry, we're going to move on to one of my favorite paints from the Army Painter line, and that's the Dry Rust Effect Paint. And what we're going to do with this is kind of just stipple it across the entirety of the blade, trying to leave a little bit of that metallic poking through. And if you do kind of brighten it up a little bit with this color too much, that's okay. We'll go through with some more dark tone and just kind of bring the color of the blade down. And as you can see with this step, I'm just kind of taking my brush and dotting the blade with the side of the brush and the tip of the brush, just trying to cover up a little bit of the metallic area and leave a little bit shining through. You don't want a nice even cover of this color across the model. That will pretty much defeat the purpose of what we did with the metallic before, so you're just trying to leave that poke through a little bit. This will brighten up the sword just a tad, so we'll go ahead and take some wash and darken it back down a little bit and just kind of blend the 2 colors together. You can also dry brush this on if stipling's not your jam. You can absolutely do this as a dry brush step. This is just a more controlled way to do that, in my opinion. And as you can see, we've kind of coated it mostly in the rust, but we've got a little bit of the gunmetal poking through, which is exactly what we're going for here. And now we're going to go ahead and darken this back down, back to the dark tone. And this will really marry the 2 colors together. We're really just kind of looking to fill in the holes of the blade. If you have a flat blade, you can just do like a thin coat of this across the entire blade, and it'll have the similar effect to this. And yep, we'll just give this another 30 minutes to 45 minutes to dry, and we'll move on to one of the final steps here. And again, this step isn't completely necessary. You can absolutely choose to skip or ignore this step. This just kind of adds a little bit more detail and marries the 2 colors together, but if you're going for speed here, you absolutely don't need to do this step. You can just move on to the following step. And now, if you'd like to, you can absolutely call the blade of the model finished here, if you're going for a quick and easy rust effect, although we do have one more step here to add a little bit more flair if you'd like to. And with that step, we're going to switch over to Toxic Mist, and we're going to do a little bit of a dry brush with this color. We're going to kind of create a bit of verdigris on the rust, which is the kind of blue crust that you see on rust sometimes. So with this, we're just going to kind of do a mix of dry brushing and stipling across the blade, and just add a little bit more color and interest to the model here. This step can be a little bit finicky. My best advice would be to take your time with it and add it slowly. You can always add more to the model, and it's much harder to take away paint from the model. So keep that in mind when you're doing this, and just try to think about how much you want to add. And this is a great effect for any Death Guard army, any death-themed army, or anything that's kind of, you know, plaguey or undead or anything of that nature. This is a really great quick effect to add to those models. And as you can see here, I'm just slowly building up the color here with a little bit of paint on my brush. I'm really avoiding the holes in the blade, trying to keep those dark from the wash that we did earlier. And trying to hit the edges as well, because those would be some really good areas for a nice highlight as well. And if you do add a little bit too much, just go back with some of the dry rust or the metallic and just dot the areas you'd like to cover back up, and then just go over those with the wash again, and that should fix it. You may need to cover it entirely with the dry rust again and start from that point. But it's usually pretty simple to fix. It's not usually too hard to cover up your mistakes with this kind of technique. And as you can see here, it's given us a nice variation in color compared to the rust effect that we've done earlier. We're kind of working with opposite colors here, so that's kind of why it works there. And moving on, we will actually do a little bit of dark tone just to fix a couple of the mistakes that we made with the Toxic Mist. It did kind of get in some areas I didn't really want it to, so we'll just hit the rim of the sword that meets the hilt, and some of the holes in the blade as well. And if any of you guys are new to the channel, thank you guys for checking out our content. We really appreciate it. We do giveaways with every single one of our videos. Be sure to check the top link in the description here to take part in this giveaway. And thanks again for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you liked our content, and happy wargaming, guys.